puzzle has no border at all. It would be more difficult to distinguish the inside pieces from the border pieces. This is kind of what it's like for the international manager. They have to work with unfamiliar information and try to organize it so they can put everything together. In an international setting, the puzzle pieces do not look as familiar, and it's not as easy to control the process because you are unaware of all the nuances of how they work or fit together. So, organizing in a foreign setting is challenging, to say the least. All the aspects we have talked about so far have to be controlled. We have talked about how each has their own set of rules when it comes to an international situation. Thus, controlling them is a big challenge. There will be different laws, rules, formal norms, and informal norms that will come into play that a manager has to understand or learn. Banking will be different, accounting statements will be different, and labor laws will be different. A manager will use all of these tools to control his or her operations, and they will be totally different than what we are used to here in the U.S. Finally, we have leading. In this case, the main challenge is the interpretation of the words and actions used, as well as bridging cultural barriers. For example, in many South American markets, it is acceptable to be late for meetings or work. These cultures are not as time-bound as we are. So, if a manager wants to lead his production team to be on time and work hard, he or she will be leading into a black hole. The culture simply will not accept it. Thus, a manager has to totally adapt his or her leadership style to the market conditions and accepted norms to have any chance of leading. International managers take on the same challenges as U.S. managers. There is just a different spin on it, mostly due to laws and culture. Planning. A manager must understand the laws present and the information at hand to be able to plan effectively. Organizing. Once they understand the information and laws, they need to be able to get all the pieces working together to get the desired outcome. Staffing. Culture and language barriers play a large role here, as well as laws and accepted norms. Controlling. International managers have to be able to understand how all the information they get in an international setting is to be interpreted in order to be successful. And finally, leading. Language and culture again play a large part in this aspect. A good manager will need to adjust his or her leadership style to the culture at hand to have any chance of success. In the end, while many of the aspects are the same as what we face in the U.S., they have totally different forms to them. It is a shape, if you will, that is recognizable yet different due to it coming from a foreign market. To quote Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto.
If you go to your doctor complaining about chest pain, chances are he or she will ask where you have been lately, what you've been eating, and if you have any past medical problems. Your doctor is considering both the internal and external causes of your chest pain. Systems view, or the process of considering both internal and external influences, is becoming a prominent way to evaluate not only personal health, but also the health of your global business. Imagine that you are the CEO of an American clothing and textiles company with offices in Russia. Last month's profits fell. At first glance, it appears that labor costs have increased. In an effort to reduce the cost of labor, you increase quotas, or the number of products that should be produced each week. However, despite increasing quotas, the profits are still falling. In systems view, you would look at more than just the cost of labor, including the cost of transporting the products, the currency exchange rate, and the political environment, all of which are interacting and influencing the company's profits. Using this diagram, think back to the example about your heart. In business, the organization receiving the inputs, signified by the plus sign, is your heart, and your veins are the organization's structure, staff, and production processes, which is the A in our diagram. Your air and food are the interactions between your organization and the politics of the region you're working in, the country's level of development, and any external factors that influence the success of your company, which are all part of the B in our diagram. Thus, the interactions between the three reduce the outputs. When you use systems theory, you look at all of the internal and external elements that influence how efficiently your company works in the global environment. As a global manager for a clothing and textiles company, it's your job to make sure that the entire organization is successful. Let's say that you notice the number of t-shirts produced at a factory in China have decreased by nearly 5%. You decide to take a trip to China and evaluate the manufacturing process. While there, you find some inconsistencies in the production procedures. Over the next few weeks, you help to create new procedures. Upon return home, you're optimistic that the next month, the factory will produce the expected number of t-shirts. Next month, you see a slight increase, but not enough to convince you that the problem has been resolved. Instead of going back to China, you decide to take a look at the amount of cotton their factory has received to make the t-shirts. The important documents show you that the Chinese factory isn't receiving enough cotton to meet their production targets. With this new information, you turn your attention to the cotton farm in Texas. You contact the farmers and find out that there are some new harvesting tools that could improve the time it takes to pick the cotton. As you decide whether you should purchase the new equipment, you determine that you should take another look at the farm to see if there's anything other than equipment affecting the cotton production. Your hard work pays off, and you find out that the cotton picking techniques are influencing the profitability. But global warming is also impacting the amount of cotton that's growing. Purchasing equipment may improve picking, but it will not fix an environmental problem. By using systems view and looking at entire systems, you uncover how the environment and the staff are both influencing your company's success. Instead of only focusing on the t-shirt production or cotton picking techniques, you've also found out that the company may need to work with an agricultural business to improve the quality of the cotton seed. Instead of only fixing the production issues, which would only last a short time, this approach allows you to find the root of the problem. When you know how the entire system is interacting, then you can come up with long-lasting plans, rather than fixing one problem at a time. Using systems view gives you a strategic advantage by helping your company to figure out the best way to use your company's resources to improve profitability. As the global manager, it's your job to figure out how everything is affecting the system. Systems view considers how the internal and external inputs are affecting your organization's success. Instead of fixing one production problem at a time, systems view allows you to find the underlying causes of the production problems. Many managers only look internally, but when you look at the external influences, such as global warming, you can begin to understand how both the staff and the environment are affecting your profitability. You can then take a more inclusive approach to solving the problems. Taking this approach can help you to determine sustainable solutions to
Central Machining has been based solely in the United States in Oklahoma since 1950, but they recently purchased a small company in South Korea. The company specializes in military equipment repairs and chose Seoul as its first venture into the global economy. Now that the company has made this purchase, management wants to engage in global workforce development for those workers who will be sent to South Korea to kickstart the expansion. Where does Central Machining start? The globalization of a company takes a great deal of resources. A company like Central Machining needs to be good at what it does and have enough capital to invest in something considered very risky. Interacting in different markets with various currencies, laws, politics, language, cultures, and customs can be overwhelming. This is why only the most secure companies with the best human resources should make this step. Global workforce planning and development is the process of how a company effectively transitions its human resources to work in an international environment. Developing flexibility to work effectively across cultures and be a liaison among cultures will positively impact a business. Companies like Central Machining have to look at developing their human resources by training in language fundamentals, cultural awareness, and expatriate skills. Let's look at how we develop a workforce when it's going from a native to a global environment. Language is one of the key elements needed for Central Machining to make its transition. Even though most companies do business in English, there are times when people are more comfortable speaking in their primary language. When working in a foreign country, it's considered respectful to speak in the indigenous language. For example, if Central Machining wants to do business with the South Korean government, the company will have to hire translators to help with negotiations. The company should also seek out locals to fill new positions within the company. Knowing the history of an area, understanding how holidays work, and being familiar with social class differences will go a long way to improving cultural awareness within a company. For Central Machining, having training that addresses cultural differences in both the professional and personal environment will streamline the staff's transition to South Korea. Expatriates are employees who are citizens in one country that work in another country for different assignments. Over time, expatriates become familiar with legal, financial, and travel hassles that come with the territory. Bringing in a consulting service might be a way Central Machining can get its trainers familiar with coming to and going from South Korea. As more companies enter into international markets, some will fail simply because they aren't capable of making the transition. Although they may have the technical skills, these companies may lack the experience needed to expand. To avoid failure, companies should start the process of globalization by focusing on their human resources. Knowing how to operate in a foreign market is just as important as having an excellent product or service. Global workforce planning and development is a key part of a business's strategic planning when looking to go international. Although technical skills are important, it's the ability to work in an international environment that builds the foundation for success. Using training to improve language, fundamentals, cultural awareness, and expatriate skills will prepare a company for long-term global success.
Gail works as a human resource specialist for a large multinational conglomerate that employs thousands of people in facilities on every continent except Antarctica. She's part of a team of staffing specialists that help recruit employees for the company's overseas operations. Gail and her team may fill some positions with people that are not citizens of the country where they will be employed. Let's take a quick look at the types of employees working on the international stage. You can generally break employees working in a foreign facility or office of an international company into 3 categories. Let's take a look. Ken works in France, but is a citizen of the United States where his company is organized and headquartered. Ken is an expatriate, which is a citizen of the company's home country working in a foreign country. Antoinette is Ken's executive security in France, but unlike Ken, she's a citizen of France and is considered a host country national. She is an employee hired by a foreign company to work in her own country. Hans works for the same company as Ken and Antoinette in France, but he's a German. An employee like Hans that is a citizen of one country but is working in another country for a company that is headquartered in a third country is called a third country national. Yale can rely upon ethnocentric staffing, which involves staffing the most important positions in foreign subsidiaries with expatriates from the company's home country. Expatriates are often believed to better represent the interests of the home office and ensure that the foreign offices are aligned with home headquarters. In fact, many expatriates are selected from the company's current employees and are simply transferred to a foreign subsidiary. Ethnocentric staffing presents advantages and disadvantages. The obvious advantage to ethnocentric staffing is the alignment of interests and perspective of the home office with all foreign subsidiaries abroad. Communication is also easier because there should be no language and cultural barriers. The company may also be able to transfer employees with a clear performance record that will provide some level of predictability. On the other hand, you can lose local perspective and insights that local employees can provide that may help overcome unique hurdles in each foreign office. Moreover, hiring expatriates tends to be expensive compared to hiring locally. Additionally, a high ratio of expatriates may create local resentment at foreign subsidiaries, which may hurt morale. Another option available to Gail and her team is polycentric staffing. In polycentric staffing, a company will hire host country nationals for positions in the company from mailroom clerks all the way up to the executive suites. Polycentric staffing is particularly feasible in developed countries, such as European countries, Canada, Australia, and Japan, where highly educated and trained employees can be easily located. Polycentric staffing has advantages and disadvantages. Host country nationals will be able to better guide the company on local market conditions, politics, laws, and culture at each foreign location. Use of local employees also sends a message to the country and its consumers that the company is willing to make a commitment to the country and its people. Local employees are also cheaper as there are no relocation expenses and premium compensation for working abroad. Of course, relying on locals means there may be some disconnect in perspective and interests with the home country. Locals may put local interests above the company's broader interests. Regiocentric staffing is a lot like polycentric staffing in that host country nationals staff each foreign subsidiary to a high degree. However, company offices and facilities are grouped into regions and work as a single unit with a fair degree of autonomy from home headquarters. A region can consist of a group of countries. Each region develops its own HR policies and practices. Employees may transfer between each country in the region, but don't usually go outside their home region. Let's look at an example. Since Gail's company has facilities in most of the European Union, her company may employ a regiocentric staffing strategy. All offices in Europe are staffed by citizens of European countries and are subject to a consistent set of HR policies and procedures that apply to all company locations in Europe. Employees may be transferred within Europe, but are not usually transferred to the home office in the United States. If an organization is truly global, then its best choice may be geocentric staffing. Geocentric staffing is used by businesses and other organizations that have a completely integrated global strategy. Staffing is undertaken on a global level. The best person for the job is hired regardless of the employee's country of origin. This method is the most complex because HR professionals like Gail must deal with human resource issues on a global scale. This means dealing with a multitude of different market, political, and legal environments. Let's review what we've learned. Expatriates are people from an organization's home country employed abroad at the organization's foreign subsidiaries. A host country national is a local citizen of a country employed by a foreign subsidiary. An employee who is a citizen of one country working in a different country for a company headquartered in a third country is known as a third country national. Organizations conducting activities abroad may employ different staffing strategies. Ethnocentric staffing relies primarily on expatriates, with a focus on assuring alignment of perspective and interests of foreign subsidiaries with the home headquarters. Polycentric staffing focuses on using local employees to staff a company's foreign subsidiaries, which helps the company get a handle on local conditions and also shows a commitment to the host country. Regiocentric staffing groups foreign subsidiaries by region. Employees are hired and transferred within the region, but usually not outside of it. The region will also have a common set of HR policies and procedures. Finally, geocentric staffing is a truly global approach, where the organization's overall strategy is integrated across the globe, and the best employees are selected regardless of their countries of origin.
Cross-cultural communication has become strategically important to companies due to the growth of global business, technology, and the internet. Understanding cross-cultural communication is important for any company that has a diverse workforce or plans on conducting global business. This type of communication involves an understanding of how people from different cultures speak, communicate, and perceive the world around them. Cross-cultural communication in an organization deals with understanding different business customs, beliefs, and communication strategies. Language differences, high context versus low context cultures, nonverbal differences, and power distance are major factors that can affect cross-cultural communication. Let's take a look at how cross-cultural differences can cause potential issues within an organization. Jack is a manager at a New Mexico-based retail conglomerate. He has flown to Japan to discuss a potential partnership with a local Japanese company. His business contact, Yamato, is his counterpart within the Japanese company. Jack has never been to Japan before, and he's not familiar with their cultural norms. Let's look at some of the ways that a lack of cultural understanding can create a barrier for business success by examining how Jack handles his meeting with Yamato. The concept of high and low context culture relates to how an employee's thoughts, opinions, feelings, and upbringing affect how they act within a given culture. North America and Western Europe are generally considered to have low context cultures. This means that businesses in these places have direct, individualistic employees who tend to base decisions on facts. This type of business person wants specifics noted in contracts and may have issues with trust. High context cultures are the opposite, and that trust is the most important part of business dealings. There are areas in the Middle East, Asia, and Africa that can be considered high context. Organizations that have high context cultures are collectivists and focus on interpersonal relationships. Individuals from high context cultures might be interested in getting to know the person they are conducting business with in order to get a gut feeling on decision making. They may also be more concerned about business teams and group success rather than individual achievement. Jack and Yamato ran into some difficulties during their business negotiations. Jack spoke quickly and profusely because he wanted to seal the deal as soon as possible. However, Yamato wanted to get to know Jack, and he felt that Jack spoke too much. Yamato also felt that Jack was only concerned with completing the deal for his own self-interest and was not concerned with the overall good of the company. Jack's nonverbal cues did not help the negotiations either. Gestures and eye contact are two areas of nonverbal communication that are utilized differently across cultures. Companies must train employees in the correct way to handle nonverbal communication, as to not offend other cultures. For example, American workers tend to wave their hand and use a finger to point when giving nonverbal direction. Extreme gesturing is considered rude in some cultures. While pointing may be considered appropriate in some contexts in the United States, Yamato would never use a finger to point towards another person because that gesture is considered rude in Japan. Instead, he might gesture with an open hand with his palm facing up toward the person. Eye contact is another form of nonverbal communication. In the U.S., eye contact is a good thing and is seen as a reflection of honesty and straightforwardness. However, in some Asian and Middle Eastern cultures, prolonged eye contact can be seen as rude or aggressive in many situations. Women may need to avoid it altogether because lingering eye contact can be viewed as a sign of sexual interest. During their meeting, Jack felt that Yamato was not listening to his talking points because Yamato was not looking Jack in the eyes. However, Yamato did not want Jack to think he was rude, so he avoided looking directly into Jack's eyes during this speech. The biggest issue dealing with cross-cultural communication is the difficulty created by language barriers. For example, Jack does not speak Japanese, so he is concerned with his ability to communicate effectively with Yamato. There are some strategies that Jack can use to help establish a rapport with Yamato. Jack can explain himself without words by using emotions, facial expressions, and other nonverbal cues. He can also use drawings and ask for an interpreter. Additionally, companies that have to deal with cross-cultural communication can hire employees with proficiencies in other languages. Fortunately for Jack and Yamato, they both had excellent translators who communicated their words. The next cross-cultural issue regards how individuals deal with power distance. Power distance relates to how power is distributed within an organization. Typically, American companies utilize a low power distance and have more informal hierarchies that allow for interaction between executives and their subordinates. Managers ask for feedback from employees and will even socialize with subordinates. Companies with high power distance are typically very hierarchical in nature and have severe differences in authority. Some Japanese companies may utilize this power structure. For example, Yamato would never consider asking his employees for their feedback on his managerial style. Jack made a big mistake when he asked Yamato's workers for their thoughts on his business ideas. Jack did not realize how segregated the power structure is in a high power distance culture. Jack's meeting with Yamato did not go very well. He returned to the U.S. without having secured a partnership for the retail conglomerate. However, Jack has learned some basic strategies to follow in order to succeed in cross-cultural communication. Employees should become proficient in the language of the company they're visiting or arrange for an interpreter to ensure efficient communication. Employees need to understand whether a culture is high or low context and approach the business situation with an understanding of how the employee views relationships. Companies need to familiarize employees with cultural differences in nonverbal communication through mock interviews and business meetings to eliminate the potential for any offensive gestures, touches, or eye contact. Employees should understand how power distance within an organization relates to culture, including the hierarchical differences across culture. Jack learned his lesson. He decided to conduct extensive research into the key factors of cross-cultural communication and has created a cultural awareness workshop that all employees must take in order to conduct any global business. The workshop covers language studies, awareness of cultural differences, and how to negotiate with people of diverse backgrounds. Cross-cultural communication is a necessity for any company that has a diverse workforce or plans on conducting global business. This type of communication provides an understanding of how employees of different cultures speak, communicate, and perceive the world around them. Cross-cultural communication in an organization deals with understanding different cultural business customs, beliefs, and language connotations. Language differences, high context versus low context, nonverbal differences, and power distance are the major factors that can affect cross-cultural communication. Companies need to have strategies in place to educate their employees about different organizational global cultures. Diversity workshops, language classes, and negotiation strategies for different cultures are all important factors in cross-cultural understanding in an organization.
You wake up, grab a coffee, run to your office, get to work, and you can't remember the last time you took a vacation. If this is you, you're probably American. This go-getter, non-stop working style is commonly highlighted when businesses discuss American working culture. Culture, or the common beliefs, values, and practices of a group, influence how we interact with others, and what we perceive to be acceptable working practices. In international business, you'll likely work with a diverse group of people, including those from different cultural backgrounds. This means not everyone will have the same fast-paced work ethic that you do. Intercultural competence, or the ability to recognize and appreciate the many cultures of our world, will be essential to your ability to effectively handle these differences. Furthermore, this skill set is crucial to the success or failure of your business in the international arena. There are many ways in which cultural differences can be addressed. The Bennett model, also known as the Developmental Model of Intercultural Sensitivity, DMIS, is a cognitive-based theory that considers individual perceptions of another culture and includes a 6-stage process to accepting cultural differences. Okay, get your bags ready. You're headed on an adventure to learn about DMIS through a business deal in India. Imagine that your boss tells you that your company is partnering with a new clothing manufacturer based in India, and that you're going to formulate the contract and close the deal. In preparation for your up-and-coming business trip to India, you spend hours examining the contract and consult with several lawyers to make sure every detail is perfect. However, you've never worked internationally, and you've never personally met anyone from India. You know that people from India are different from Americans, but this is business, and business is the same everywhere, right? This lack of knowledge and experience with working internationally may be causing you to deny important cultural differences, which is the failure to recognize the unique cultural features of another group. Even though there may be some relatively universal characteristics to conducting business, such as the use of a contract, the process to reaching the business deal and signing the contract may differ drastically by country. So, you continue on your trip, and around 3 p.m. you arrive at your hotel. Your Indian partner, Adi, lets you know that you should meet him for dinner at 8 p.m. Eager to get to work, you're frustrated that he doesn't want to meet right away, and who eats dinner at 8 p.m.? You suggest meeting at 6 p.m., even starting to argue that 8 p.m. is just too late. Adi insists that you meet him at the time he has specified, and you resentfully agree. Being defensive against cultural differences is tied to the belief that your culture's way of doing things is best. Everyone should eat dinner at 6 p.m., and it's strange, weird, and even wrong to eat dinner later than that. When confronted with this difference, you might become agitated and frustrated, and even suggest that the other person isn't normal. Discouraged, and on a tight timeline, you make it to dinner. After initial greetings, you begin to discuss the details of the contract. Adi, who has already ordered dinner for everyone, ignores your mention of the deal, introduces you to his cousin, wife, and children, and begins asking you questions about your family. Also, Adi ordered chicken tikka masala, your favorite Indian dish. Did he know that you loved this?
As you eat dinner and discuss your family, this experience makes you feel like you're pretty similar to Adi. Minimizing the differences by making note of commonalities allows you to begin to feel like Adi isn't that different after all. Sure, he eats at a strange time, but you like similar foods and your family has similar characteristics. At the end of the meal, Adi finally lets you talk business. You quickly come to an agreement, and he lets you know that he'll review the contract with his cousin and have an answer for you by noon the next day. This time, you don't argue with Adi's seemingly strange business style. Instead, you accept the differences and decide to be respectfully mindful of others' cultural differences, even if that means he needs to consult with a cousin, and you thank him for his time. Okay, so far we've reviewed 4 of the 6 stages to DMIS: denial of differences, defense against differences, minimizing differences, and acceptance of differences. All of these are part of the common reactions to working with a different culture. However, there are 2 more phases, which are easily the most important to successfully working in international business. Recognizing, understanding, and accepting another person's culture is important to successfully maneuvering the world we live in. In international business, understanding these beliefs and values is essential to effectively working in environments outside of your norm. Okay, now comes the last 2 stages of the Minute Model. An adaptation to differences is the ability to work effectively outside of your own culture. You respect and understand that there are differences between you and the culture you're working with in India, and you work to be as adaptive as possible to aid in your contract negotiations. This stage is a very important step to working well with businesses across the world. Okay, DMIS has one last stage, one that many international corporations have found to be an important key to their success. The integration of differences is the ability to work like a gecko, which means you can easily maneuver through changing environments. You may no longer see yourself as just an American, but rather also as a person existing in a mix of many cultures. You value the differences between your culture and others, and you're able to expand your belief system while also fostering greater cooperation and collaboration with your international partners. Navigating cultural differences is crucial to successfully working in the international environment. The developmental model of intercultural sensitivity, DMIS, allows us to examine the consequences of not knowing or not understanding other cultures. The 6 stages of DMIS include denial, defense, minimization, acceptance, adaptation, and integration of differences. Through experience and research, you can begin to relate, empathize, adapt, and integrate cultural differences into your business.
Different people negotiate different ways. An older gentleman might negotiate one way, while a single mother of 3 might negotiate another way. These differences are not only present here in the U.S., but also when we negotiate with individuals from other countries. Culture influences how individuals negotiate and how they view and interpret the negotiation process. If we understand that negotiations are conversations aimed at reaching an agreement, and if we can also understand that different cultures reach agreements in different ways, then we have the basis of international negotiations. That is to say, how one culture may look at the negotiation process totally different than another. These differences can create conflict in the process. There are several main areas where cultural differences impact negotiating. The following are all differences that may arise during the negotiation process due to cultural differences. Desire for a long-term relationship or just a one-time deal. Preference to win negotiating or preference for a win-win negotiating. Informal or formal attitude. Direct or indirect communication style. Show emotion or hide emotions. Decisions made by the group or by the leader. Let's look at each of these points to get a better idea of how they can affect negotiation. First, we can discuss whether the negotiating party is looking for just a one-shot type of business or long-term relationship. While some markets might be looking for just a contract, Spain for example, members of other countries might be looking for a long-term relationship. India, for example. Next, we have the win-win thought process of negotiations. Some cultures look at negotiating as a win-win type of process, as the Japanese do, but countries like Spain typically do not view the negotiation that way. They prefer to win the negotiation and are not as concerned with the win-win proposition. Personal style also plays a cultural part in negotiations. Specifically, is a person more formal, professional, detailed, structured, and businesslike, or informal, more personable, wanting to connect with the other party when it comes to negotiating? As it relates to negotiating, the Germans are more formal where individuals from Mexico are more informal. This formality helps guide how these 2 different cultures negotiate and in turn how you should negotiate with them. Tied somewhat to the aspects of formal or informal culture is the aspect of whether individuals in the culture communicate directly or indirectly. An example of this is in negotiations, yes does not mean yes with the Japanese. Yes means I understand, and is very indirect means of communicating. On the other hand, the Israelis believe in very direct communication, which can sometimes feel off-putting to those who do not understand this cultural difference. There are many other aspects that can affect negotiations, such as if individuals in the culture typically hide how they're feeling, like the Japanese, or do they show their feelings right away, like much of the Latin culture. There's always the concept of how group decision making is handled. Do they make a decision as a group, or does one person in the group make the decision? Many Asian cultures stress team consensus before a decision can be made, and typically in the U.S. we're looking for the group leader to make the decision. All the aspects that were just explained influence how negotiations are going to take place. Each country, unless they are well educated in the negotiation position of other countries, will enter a negotiation from the perspective of what they are most comfortable with, mainly how they negotiate in their home country. Do we not, as Americans, enter into negotiations thinking how everyone in the negotiation should act? As we have seen here, that is not the case, and different cultures will negotiate in different ways, or we could say, from different perspectives. And unless a person understands these cultural nuances, they could perceive these nuances as being rude, time-wasting, or even disrespectful. Negotiating is an art no matter what country you're in. Weaving your way through a negotiation so you can obtain what you want or need is a skill unto itself. Thus, it makes sense that understanding cultural aspects of negotiating can make you a stronger negotiator. As the world gets smaller and the organizations become more diverse, it is not just the international traveler that has to be aware of these cultural issues. Indeed, for anyone to be truly skilled negotiator, they have to know the person they are negotiating with, which includes the cultural aspect. Remember, when dealing with culture in negotiations and potential conflict, there are several main areas that are present. Desire for a long-term relationship or just a one-time deal. preference to win negotiating or preference for a win-win situation, informal or formal attitude, direct or indirect communication style, show emotion or hide emotions, and finally, decisions made by the group or by a leader.